There was a girl under a terrible curse. Any boy who came near her would meet a strange and deadly accident. Over time, people began calling her a witch, and they kept their distance. Since she was a child, odd things always seemed to happen around Mijong. Once, a boy tried to show his affection playfully, but ended up falling into an open manhole at a construction site. Another time, a boy shyly gave her candy on White Day, but on his way home he was hit by a car. At first, Mijong thought these were just freak accidents, but in high school, things got worse. The senior she had feelings for was accepted into Korea University. Excited, he handed her his study notes and promised to wait for her in college, but the very next moment, he suddenly collapsed and started convulsing. Mijong assumed he had been stung by a wasp. Other boys nearby rushed him to the hospital. Later, the senior moved to Seoul and Mijong never saw him again. Rumors began to spread that it was Mijong's fault he got hurt. One boy, trying to defend her, stopped the gossiping girls and offered Mijong a bottle of milk. But the whispers still wounded her deeply. Mijong's mother had died while giving birth to her, and her birthday was also the day her mother passed away. To keep her from feeling guilty, her father always celebrated only her birthday and gave her cash instead of presents, hoping she would use it to make friends and buy them treats. Not wanting to worry her father, she lied and said she had friends, but the curse didn't let up. One day, all 12 boys in her class came down with food poisoning, while the girls remained perfectly fine. Again, all eyes turned to Mijong with suspicion. Even she began to notice that strange accidents were happening more often at school, and it was always the boys who got hurt. One rainy afternoon, she waited for the storm to pass. A boy offered to walk her home. Along the way, he nervously confessed his feelings. Just then, a bus splashed past them, nearly soaking them. Mijong recalled the frightening rumors about her curse. The boy, flustered, ran off before she could respond. Moments later, 2 deafening thunderclaps roared from the sky, and the boy was struck by lightning and killed. The entire school held a memorial for him. Mijong was consumed with guilt as she watched the hearse drive away, thinking, if only he'd never met me, he might still be alive. Not far away, Dongjin quietly observed her. He was the only one who noticed her face streaked with tears. Rumors swirled around the school. Every mishap seemed to revolve around Mijong. They claimed that whoever got close to her ended up cursed. Some even called her a witch. However, argued that it wasn't fair to judge someone based on isolated incidents. Just because accidents happened near her didn't mean she caused them. Later, the school went on a picnic, and Dongjin was in charge of taking photos. Through his camera, he noticed Mijong sitting by herself, reading. He secretly took her picture. During lunch, a boy offered Mijong a drink. She panicked, stopped him mid-confession, and quickly ran away. Yet the boy still ended up seriously injuring his leg. Dongjin saw Mijong rise to her feet, trembling with fear. After the trip, Dongjin hurried to develop the photos. As he looked at her close-up shot, he saw how unhappy she looked. The next day, the injured boy came to school on crutches. He blamed Mijong for his accident and warned his friends to stay away from her. Over time, Mijong became quieter and more withdrawn, avoiding people as much as she could. Dongjin noticed she always sat alone at lunch, baking under the harsh sun. Remembering that his mother was the PTA president, he ran to help at her shop. After lifting her mood, he suggested they set up a sunshade in front of the school warehouse, saying it could prevent skin damage after playing soccer. Although he got scolded for speaking too freely, his mother agreed. Seeing Mijong finally enjoying her lunch in the shade, Dongjin felt a bit of relief. However, accidents continued to happen at school, and it was always the boys who spoke to Mijong who got hurt. Slowly, boys began avoiding her altogether, while the rumors only grew louder. Some even gossiped that Mijong's mother had died during childbirth, and they openly called her a cursed witch. At night, Mijong felt the most at peace. Her father noticed her always studying alone in her room and told her he could afford tutoring classes. Proudly, she replied that she didn't need them and still kept her grades high, but her father could still sense the weight on her heart. Mi-jong smiled softly and said seriously that nothing unusual had happened in the following days. She kept going to school quietly, staying out of the spotlight. One of the boys, feeling guilty about how unfairly she had been treated, tried to comfort her, saying that all those incidents were just accidents. At that moment, a group of girls passed by and noticed them talking. Mi-jong, ignoring him, walked away without a word. But the persistent boy followed her, and gathering his courage, confessed his feelings. Just then, Mi-jong caught sight of a damaged high-voltage box. Before she could warn him, a live wire snapped and struck the boy. Another tragedy unfolded, and this time, everyone became fully convinced she was cursed. People started to avoid her completely. Only Dong-jin stood silently, watching her with a sad expression. Even her usual seat at school was defaced with cruel insults. She no longer had a place there. Before leaving, she turned back for a moment, sensing something. Dong-jin was still watching her gently. He waited anxiously for the next break, hoping to finally approach her and say, "Hi, I'm Lee Dong-jin." But Mi-jong never returned to school. Her father was furious that she had dropped out without saying a word. Mi-jong stayed silent, hiding under her blanket and crying quietly. To understand the truth, Mr. Park visited her classmate Daeun, who told him everything Mi-jong had suffered. Finally, Mr. Park grasped the depth of his daughter's pain. Eyes red with sorrow, he packed her school bag and lunchbox. Before he left, he saw Dong-jin cleaning off the hateful graffiti from her desk. Unlike the rest, Dong-jin never believed the terrible rumors. He vowed to prove one day that Mi-jong was innocent. Mr. Park gently patted his shoulder and thanked him. Mi-jong stayed, holed up in her room all day, with her father reminding her now and then to eat. She wished people would just forget about her. But the rumors only spread like wildfire, filling every corner of the village. One day, Mr. Park got into a heated fight when a man accused Mi-jong of being the reason his son was injured, because of all the gossip. Heartbroken over how his daughter was being slandered, Mr. Park warned everyone that if they kept spreading lies, he would tear the place apart. Meanwhile, some nosy women advised Dong-jin's mother to keep her son away from Mi-jong. Mi-jong, who always liked animals more than people, asked her father to buy some cat food, but he refused, saying stray cats bring misfortune. Mi-jong quietly mumbled that stray cats didn't bring bad luck, and she was no different from them. Realizing his harsh words had hurt her, Mr. Park went to Dong-jin's family store. Unfortunately, they didn't sell cat food, only fertilizer and pesticides. Dong-jin's mother kindly offered some of her son's cat food for free, but Mr. Park insisted on paying. When Mi-jong received the cat food, she smiled from the bottom of her heart for the first time in a long while. Seeing her happiness, her father finally felt a moment of true joy. Soon after, the seniors graduated. Dong-jin's mother, dressed in a fancy mink coat, posed for photos with her son at the ceremony. But Dong-jin's mind was elsewhere. He only wanted to see Mi-jong. Meanwhile, Daeun quietly left a small graduation gift at Mi-jong's door, perhaps as a silent apology, before hurrying away in embarrassment. Dong-jin also wanted to leave flowers at her door, but as the door suddenly opened, he panicked and ran off. Mi-jong found the alumni book and noticed her photo had been placed next to the group picture. Maybe this was Daeun's quiet way of saying sorry. Mr. Park encouraged his daughter to continue her education, telling her that if she passed the qualification exam, it would be equivalent to finishing high school, and she could still attend college. He dreamed of taking her far away from this painful village to Seoul. As he spoke, his gums ached from his periodontitis, but he smiled and promised that once they settled in Seoul, the first thing he'd do was see a dentist. Inspired by her father's support, Mi-jong found hope again and started studying. During the potato harvest, Mi-jong didn't want her father to work alone, so she went to the fields to help him. Suddenly, a venomous snake slithered out of the soil and bit her ankle. Mr. Park rushed to her side, but Mi-jong quickly lost consciousness. When she came to, she saw her father lying beside her, barely breathing. He had sucked the poison from her wound. But because of his periodontitis, the venom had spread rapidly through his body. Desperate, Mi-jong cried out for help, but her father stopped her. If anyone saw them, they would surely blame her for his condition. He begged her to run away and escape the villagers' cruelty. However, the villagers began to gather. To protect her father's dignity, Mi-jong lied and said no one had seen them. In the end, her father passed away in her arms. People in the village called her a witch, the kind who could kill her own father, and they chased her out of their town. Dong-jin had no idea about this at the time. To prove that Mi-jong wasn't actually a witch, he decided to study statistics. In college, in class, there was a boy who always sat at the back quietly, catching everyone's attention. His name was Kim. He kept to himself and never spoke to anyone. The other students whispered that he might be a psychopath. But when Dong-jin noticed him, he felt something strangely familiar. Kim reminded him of Mi-jong. Feeling drawn to him, Dong-jin tried to strike up a friendship, but Kim simply picked up his tray and walked away without saying a word. Dong-jin didn't give up. He first offered Kim some potatoes from his neighbor's farm, then invited him to share a meal together. Kim was caught off guard. Usually when he ignored people, they quickly stopped trying and kept their distance. But Dong-jin admitted openly that Kim reminded him of someone from his past. He confessed that he hadn't been brave enough back then and didn't want to repeat the same mistake now. Eventually, they went to a restaurant. Even though they sat at separate tables, they grew closer. Kim began to grow curious about Dong-jin's daily life. Dong-jin told him without hesitation. He worked 3 part-time jobs to help a friend afford textbooks. After lunch, he changed into a work uniform since he also had a job at that very restaurant. Over time, the two became real friends. When summer break came, Dong-jin went back to his hometown. While flipping through his old school photos, he paused at a picture of Mi-jong. His mother brought up the local gossip. A few months ago, that witch caused her father's death. A boy from the laundry shop had visited Mi-jong to comfort her, but on his way home, he was struck by a wild boar. Even Mistress Oh, who was usually kind, believed Mi-jong was bad luck and should be avoided. For the first time, Dong-jin argued with his mother. He used statistics to explain that accidents and deaths happen all the time. They were just coincidences. Blaming Mi-jong made no sense. Determined, he prepared to visit Mi-jong's house, but his mother stopped him, saying Mi-jong had probably left long ago. The villagers had forced her out, and now the house stood empty. Dong-jin slumped against the door, feeling hopeless. He pulled out his research papers, which he had written to clear Mi-jong's name, but it was already too late. A sudden gust of wind scattered his papers everywhere. In that moment, Dong-jin felt an overwhelming longing for Mi-jong. He realized that time waits for no one, especially when it comes to love. Later, his professor understood why Dong-jin had chosen to study statistics and admired his kindness and persistence. But the professor also pointed out that his research had been flawed from the beginning. Dong-jin had already decided Mi-jong wasn't a witch and had used statistics to back up his belief. The professor advised him to revisit his questions with fresh eyes. Taking the advice seriously, Dong-jin re-examined the events, removing random accidents and coincidences from his analysis. He focused on a single question. What was the common link in all these incidents? Looking closely at every event, he found one consistent factor. Mi-jong was always there. If the data was correct, there was only one conclusion left. Mi-jong truly was a witch. Crushed by the truth, Dong-jin broke down in tears under the heavy rain, hating himself for not being able to prove her innocence. Time passed, and graduation day arrived. With his professor's recommendation, Dong-jin became a data analyst and moved to Seoul. Kim, on the other hand, became a detective. Not long after, Dong-jin was assigned to a casino project. With just a few seconds of observation, he could guess a customer's age, income, and visit frequency. He focused on a man in his 30s, an office worker. Dong-jin estimated the man rented a small office, drove a mid-sized domestic car, and earned around 42 million won a year. The man was about to lose all his money at the casino. Following Dong Jin's suggestion, a waiter offered the man a luxurious meal and a hotel voucher for his next visit. Some criticized this approach, but Dong Jin believed it was smarter to keep the customers coming back rather than letting them lose everything and never return. This strategy would keep profits flowing in the long term. The casino chairman found this interesting and even considered investing more in the company. Just then, the office worker sold his car to gamble even more. The chairman let out a deep sigh, mentioning that life was filled with too many uncertainties. He handed Dong Jin his business card and casually invited him for dinner sometime. As Dong Jin was about to head home, he discovered his car's windshield had been smashed. When he checked the dashcam footage, he saw the culprit looking at their phone number before breaking the glass. The detective suspected it was likely someone holding a grudge. While filing the complaint, the officer seemed puzzled about Dong Jin's profession as a data miner. Dong Jin explained that he was basically an office worker who analyzed huge amounts of data to uncover insights. For instance, he pointed to two men arguing behind them and explained they were probably family. They both had a habit of wiping bottle caps, wore clothes with identical water stains, and had similar white hairs. At that moment, a woman carrying a white puppy showed up. She apologized to the officers and took her sons home. The detective found Dong Jin's line of work quite intriguing, and before parting, promised to look into the vandalism case properly. That evening, Dong Jin had plans to meet with Kim. However, Kim mentioned he might be late as he'd just caught a dangerous criminal. To avoid disturbing him, Dong Jin fibbed and said he was at a social gathering. While riding the subway back, Dong Jin spotted a drunk man confessing his feelings to a woman. To his surprise, the woman's side profile looked familiar. It was Mi Yong, his old crush from high school. Yet again, he didn't have the courage to approach her, and instead followed quietly from a distance. They left the station and wandered into a quiet alley, where Dong Jin saw Mi Jong feeding stray cats. Hiding nearby, he overheard her talking to herself, wondering how to live a peaceful life away from people. She admitted she didn't know how to live or disappear properly. Despite the passing years, Mi Jong still seemed to be struggling with life. Dong Jin kept his distance and watched her head home, feeling that their unexpected reunion surely carried some meaning. The following day, he searched online for the drunken man from the subway and came across a video. After Mi Jong had walked away, the man suddenly grabbed his chest and collapsed. Later, Dong Jin met Kim and pondered if there were truly strange people in the world, like those who always jinx their favorite teams, or people whose gadgets break just from using them, or those who always end up at stores that sell out right before their turn. Kim shrugged it off as pure coincidence, but Dong Jin believed in odd forces at play, dooming some people to a life of bad luck. He felt powerless, unable to find a way to lift the curse. That day, Mistress O called Dong Jin after a hospital visit, sounding heavy-hearted as she told him she was ill. Dong Jin rushed her to Seoul for treatment. After numerous rounds of chemotherapy, Mistress O started wearing a wig. Hoping to lift her spirits, Dong Jin secretly sneaked her some beer, promising that he'd earn plenty of money and take her around the world. But Mistress O, knowing her days were numbered, gently spoke of her final wishes. She wanted her funeral to be bright and colorful, with beer decorations so she could reunite with her husband in a romantic way. She also thought about selling their home and shop to ease her son's burden, but Dong Jin chose to keep the house, cherishing the memories it held of his mother. To his surprise, he later found out that, years ago, his mother had bought Mi Jong's house. Back at the hospital, he thanked her, thinking she had helped Mi Jong out of goodwill. But Mistress O then revealed a painful secret. In the past, she had joined the villagers in driving Mi Jong away from the neighborhood. While cleaning, Mistress O had found a photo of Mi Jong and feared that her son might fall for her and end up hurt. Influenced by gossip, she made the wrong choice. When faced with harsh words from the villagers, Mi Jong first apologized and then promised to leave. To watch the second part of the movie explanation, make sure to subscribe to our channel Duty Movie, turn on the bell icon, and don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments.